It was a must-do to complete my veterinarian studies at university, but I must say I was very lucky with my thesis and with my topic. I had a lot of fun working on it, not only with my supervisors at university, but also with the stud staff in Piber. I will be brief on the introduction because all of you are Lipizzan experts, and there is probably nothing new I can tell you. The Lipizzan represents over 400 years of careful breeding, and it is one of the oldest horse breeds in Europe. There are about 7 states that are preserving the breed, and 4 of them preserve the classical line breeding formed by 6 stallion lines and 17 mare lines. And thus the genetic basis of the breed is quite narrow. And to preserve those bloodlines without fresh blood supply, it is a balance on inbreeding. The aims of the last scientists worked on over the last decades was the question, how can inbreeding be avoided in the best way in the closed breeding population? And as well, they wanted to analyze the actual genetic variability of the breed. Here you can see the 6 stallion lines, and this is a picture by Hamilton. So you can see an original, very colorful Lipizzan herd, and the clearing out of colors was due to the preference of the royal family. So the gray color was emphasized in breeding practice, but it is also likely to be more of genetic reasons, because the gray color is a dominant allele, and thus a heterozygous horse with 1 copy of the gray allele will become gray in color, and a homozygous horse, one carrying 2 gray alleles, will always produce gray offspring. I think we heard enough of the Copernicus project, but Johann Söldner helped me calculate my inbreeding coefficients for the breeding mares. He provided me with a computer program to be able to calculate the inbreeding coefficients based on the pedigree of the horses. And a work I have to mention is the diploma thesis of my colleague Christian Rehling, because it was kind of a basis to my work. It gave me the possibility to not only evaluate the status quo of both the fertility and the inbreeding situation of the population, but also to see the development of both over a period of 20 years. Okay, so the aims of my diploma thesis were to evaluate the fertility situation of the stud farm in Piber and to assess the status quo as well as the development. I wanted to compare the Lipizzan breed to other breeds, respectively to other populations. And then I wanted to see if we can find a correlation between the breeding success of the mares and their inbreeding coefficients to see if whether or not we can improve an inbreeding depression. Then, as we all know, it's not only endogenous parameters that count, but also exogenous. I looked for other main influencing factors for the breeding success and find some improvements. Okay, wow, oopsie. Okay, after the First World War, only 97 Lipizzan horses remained in Austria. And as the stud preserves the classical line breeding, the genetic basis is quite narrow. So it is also a balance on inbreeding, and inbreeding results in homozygosity, which leads to a decreased gene variability. And in general, this leads to a decreased biological fitness of a population. We call that inbreeding depression. And the population's biological fitness is its ability to survive and reproduce itself. And one parameter affected is the fertility, both in mares and in stallions. And of course, for a state stud, the fertility is of great importance. But on the other hand, there's also a desired feature, because inbreeding is also a used technique in selective breeding. The effect desired is the possibility to breed out wanted or preferred phenotypes or features more easily. So my study included the Lipizzan population of the state stud Piber. Out of the pedigrees of the horses, I calculated inbreeding coefficients, and I evaluated the reproduction success. I collected data from throughout the years 2002 to 2011, and I've had mainly two information sources. So mainly the stud book, which contains information about the Lipizzan mares and their pedigree, and then the mating notes of the stableman. And I must say the work was quite easy, and because the stableman precisely documents the mare's cycles, as well as the date of the breeding year, the date of mating, the mated stallion, and the success of the copulation. And later he adds the foal's birth as well as the sex, and in case of an abortion he adds the date of abortion, and the documentation is gapless. And I added to my data mirror, I added the inbreeding coefficients of the mares. So ultimately the results showed a currently excellent fertility situation of the breeding stud, and improvement over the last 10 years, as you can see here. The first results are from my colleague Rehling. He sampled data from 1992 to 2011, and the lower results are my results. And as you can see, the foaling rate as well as the conceiving rate is about 10% higher than 10 years before. I also wanted to know how many breeding cycles a mare needs to actually conceive, because some mares would not conceive from one stallion, and after several matings they would change the stallion. It's seldom, but it happens. And for a living foal, the average needed cycle for conception was about 1.5 cycles. Then I looked for comparable data in the literature, but I must say it's quite, it wasn't the easiest part of my work, because it's hard to find data with horses under the same requirements or the same situation as in the stud. But compared to those data I found are comparable, you can also see that the Lipizzan horse is above average. The most important thing in this table is to see that the inbreeding coefficient did not change as much as the fertility, the breeding success. So we went from inbreeding coefficient around 11.8%, it was lowered to 11.5%. Yes, and to see whether or not we can improve an inbreeding depression, well, unfortunately, the results of the inbreeding coefficients of the breeding mares did not show any range of value, so we could not find a significant correlation between the inbreeding coefficient and the breeding success. As you can see here in the left or right from you, in the right table, the A is for abort, a G is for not received, Güst in German, and L is for a living foal. But all mares have the same range of value for the inbreeding coefficients. Okay, so obviously there are other influencing factors such as the individual health of the breeding mares, their age, their condition, their nutrition, but also a herd health and the health status of the stud population, including vaccinations and deworming programs. Then management and documentation of the breeding cycles is very important, and the stableman actually does a very, very good work. He knows every horse and he documents precisely. The environment and the husbandry, the nutrition, of course, is the pregnant mare feels comfortable at the stud, is the mare stressed out by the staff, and so on. Then genetics, obviously, the performance, and last but not least, also a coincidence. Very important for the stud, I think, was the introduction of the Handbook Animal Health. It contains guidelines for the population in the stud and rules, for example, for monitoring and screening for infectious diseases such as the equine herpes virus, the equine arthritis virus, or the contagious equine metritis, and also a program like a vaccination regime and so on. Preventive medicine, for example, they wash the stallions against the contagious equine metritis, so they can find a silent, so there won't be the danger of infection of a mare. Quarantine and hygiene in case of an outbreak, disease outbreak, but also to not let horses from outside inside the stud and risk an infection. That's very important throughout events such as the World Championship they had this year, etc. And they also have a lot of cooperation programs, not only with the university in Vienna, but also with Avanche, for example. So my resume was that there is a currently very high fertility rate, and the breeding success is above average. We could not find any correlation to the inbreeding coefficient, but we have to say that under optimal conditions, an inbreeding depression is avoided. And so on the stud, the mares and the foals do live under perfect conditions. If they would live under less perfect conditions, they may show inbreeding depression. And I resume that they should continue the monitoring and management. Thank you for your attention.